Hello. Paul and I welcome you back to a discussion of insider trading, which is much in the news these days. Our guest is Thomas Hardin. As we will discuss in some detail, Tom was involved in a famous insider trading scandal that is going to be the basis of our discussion for the next 25 minutes. So let's begin. What are the pressures on somebody who works in an investment research position or a portfolio management position at a hedge fund?
So my job as an analyst, I covered technology stocks. So I got familiar with companies at that time like Intel, Apple, Yahoo, technology and internet companies. And my job was to come up with investment ideas for my boss, the portfolio manager. So these are the best stocks that we want to own, and these are the worst stocks that we want to short. My job is to dig for information, exhaustive due diligence processes, meeting with companies, meeting with suppliers to these companies, interviewing customers, trying to paint the picture of which companies are the best, which companies are the worst. It's my job as an analyst to dig up information that nobody else has, or to get an edge, to develop an edge on a certain sector or a certain company.
And does your performance determine your compensation?
It does, that's right.
So you're linked to your performance?
Linked to my performance, the performance of my ideas in the portfolio. I'm directly compensated off of those ideas, those stocks in the portfolio.
I know from previous conversations, and the audience should know, Tom was a guest in my class on 2 occasions, that you came to know a woman by the name of Rumi Khan. Can you describe that relationship?
So as a young analyst, I went to many investment conferences to hear a lot of these tech companies, CEOs and CFOs present their sort of PowerPoints of their companies to us and meet with us in one-on-one meetings. These are investment conferences, often broker sponsored. At these conferences, I, as a young analyst, met other investors, analysts at other firms. It was at one conference in 2001 where I met an individual named Rumi Khan. At this point, she was working as a consultant to a few hedge funds in New York, so not an employee of anyone, and she was trading for her own personal account in tech stocks. And I met her at a conference, as I met other investors early in my career.
No particular relationship with her other than this transient relationship?
Right, at that time.
And there came a time when she called you with an idea.
Right.
Can you describe that call?
So over the course of the next several years, I went from seeing Rumi at a conference every 6 weeks to talking to her once a month, to talking to her once a week over the course of 3, 4, 5 years, up to the point where I was talking to her quite often. And so one conversation we had, she described a client that she had in New York who had straight up asked her, we only want you to try to get inside information from companies for us. This is what their explicit guidance to her. And she told me that, and I thought that's strange or whatever, but I didn't think that I should stop talking to her. And so by 2006, in the technology stock hedge fund industry, I could see that certain other analysts, certain portfolio managers at other technology stock-focused hedge funds were talking about blatantly trading on inside information. And this was around the 2006. Not to name names, but there were certain fund managers or certain smaller funds whose reputation, whose often business model was placing trades on inside information that they gleaned from technology companies. So that kind of sets the stage. In March of 2007, this individual, Rumi Khan, gave me a phone call, and she told me that a Moody's analyst told her that a technology company named Khronos was going to be acquired next week. Here's the date, here's the price, and this is the private equity firm that's going to buy this company.
Moody's is a credit rating agency, one of the 2 largest credit rating agencies in the world, I guess.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So it's a very reputable kind of a place.
Right.
And Moody's would know about this how?
Well, Moody's comes in at some point on the deal. I believe it was Hellman and Friedman is issuing bonds to buy Khronos. It's a cash deal. And so Moody's at some point has to rate the securities in this transaction. So at some point, this Moody's employee comes into knowledge that Hellman and Friedman is going to buy Khronos.
When you hear that this comes from a Moody's analyst, you know immediately that this
This
is
is different.
inside information.
I know that this is different, right? This is inside information, right? This isn't just a rumor. And when I received this tip, I didn't make any trades at that point in Khronos, the stock. But later on in the day, I was talking to a friend at another firm, and I passed this information on to him. And now he has the information. And so he passed it on to somebody else who sat next to him at his firm.
Right.
And this guy bought several 100,000 shares of Khronos on my information. Rumi let me know that she had a substantial stake in her personal account in this stock for this event. I haven't made any trades up to this point, but in the next day or so, I was talking to my friend who I tipped this information with. He said, "Did you buy any?" And as a junior partner, I could initiate in our portfolio less than 1% of our portfolio in a stock as a starter position before talking to my senior partner. And I bought a 0.9% position in our portfolio in Khronos. And I rationalized it, or I can get into my thought process.
Yeah, I would like
Yeah,
to hear the
sure.
thought process.
So I bought 0.9% in the portfolio, and I told myself, well, everybody's doing it, or not everybody, but at least several firms are engaged in this type of trading. I told myself, who am I hurting? I know at this point I have the mens rea that I'm crossing the line, breaking the law, but I'm thinking, who am I hurting? With insider trading, it's a different kind of crime because you don't really see the victim, or it's hard to conceptualize who the victim is with this crime. But my line of thinking at my time was I could still think of myself as a good person and cross the line. And you know what? If this were to be flagged by the regulator, well, that guy at Moody's, he's the guy that would get in trouble. I'm just answering the phone and making a trade. So extremely poor self-talk here, going down the slippery slope, extremely poor rationalizations to myself.
Khronos gets taken out.
Mm-hmm.
The fund makes a profit. How much money did the fund make on that?
The fund probably made 400,000 or 500,000.
And what was your share of that, do you think?
Off that trade, I would say 15%. So
60,000?
well, maybe less than that. 3%.
3%.
Yeah. So
It's
yeah,
$12,000.
12,000, something like
All right.
that. Yeah.
And what
The
about
trade-
the other guys? Do you know how much they had traded? ones
The other guys down the stream.
The ones that you told.
Yeah, they made hundreds of thousands of dollars. It's probably over $1 million.
So
down
they
the
made much bigger trades than you did.
stream. They did. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Okay. When is the next thing you hear about the Khronos trade? It's done, you've made your money, company gets taken out. Now what happens?
That was at 9 a.m. one day, in March of 2007. About 5 minutes later, this individual, Rumi Khan, calls and says, "Did you see it? Did you see the news?" "Yes." "I hope you bought a lot." "Oh, I bought a little bit." And she said that Moody's analyst who tipped her the information, he was going to be in New York in the next week or so. She had given him my cell phone number, and could I write him a check for $10,000? And so
So that's a whole new world.
that's a whole new
for you.
world. That's not a gray area at all. My heart was pounding. Okay, I had rationalized this trade. I won't get caught for that. But she's actually asking me to pay this guy a cash bribe. Come on, Tom, he's going to have more for us. I knew that the guys that I passed it to had made a bunch of money. So I called them, going down the slippery slope here, and said, "Can you pass the hat around? Can you get cash together? Because I have to pay this guy. I'm panicked. I have to pay this guy off for Moody's. Maybe he's going to..."
Did you consider saying to Rumi, "No, thank you, I'm not doing that"?
I was scared. I was like, maybe this guy at Moody's is going to rat us out. Like, you're not thinking
Okay.
clearly at all.
Okay.
And so I got the money from the people I had tipped it to, and literally met this guy on the street one day with cash. And for people that know about insider trading, this is not the gray area of insider trading. But I was more of in a panic state, like I have to pay this guy because he has this, he could hang this over my head, not thinking, what is he going to do? Call the FBI and say, "I'm not paying a bribe," but you're not.
Right.
You're not thinking that way. You're panicked. I got to pay this guy so he doesn't blow the whistle on what, so it escalated to actually paying cash to him.
And when you handed him, what was it, a paper bag?
Yeah, like a FedEx envelope.
FedEx envelope with $10,000 in cash, and he walks away, what are you thinking?
I'm
to
thinking,
yourself?
I can't believe, I didn't even look at him, I didn't look him in the face. He said, "Are you Tom?" And I knew he'd be there on the corner. I just held it up to him. I think subconsciously, I'm thinking to myself, maybe this won't happen again. Maybe this will just happen once. Can't believe I'm doing this. but I'm doing it. Maybe he won't call again. Maybe I'll just get away with this one time.
So you, clearly you're panicked at this stage.
Yeah.
And what happens next? I mean,
So I went to a conference the next week or so.
yeah.
And at these tech conferences, there were certain groups of analysts who you could tell had all the information. And so
How could you tell they had all the information?
They would talk about it. They would talk about takeovers that they had known about before, like in hindsight, they would talk about that. So I was able to stick my chest out as a young analyst and say, well, I got one of these two guys. Oh, Tom got one? Yeah, I got Khronos. And so it was more puffery after that. And it became easier. There was 3 more.
From panic, you went to pride at the next
to puffery
conference?
at the conference. Yeah, just saying, I got one of those too. It's nothing to be proud about, but at that time, you had these groups of analysts who seemed to have all the information. I was a young analyst, like, how do I become part of
you
that
were in the
group?
game now.
Right. I could sort of have the
And when
chest
was the
out.
next trade? How did
In
it come
July
about?
of 2007, 3 months after the Khronos trade, Moody's analyst to Con, to me, Hilton was going to be acquired by the Blackstone Group. And our fund focuses on technology stocks. I'm buying shares of Hilton Hotels the day before this announcement came out. I mean, that's...
But when you get this call from Romy again, why do you say not interested?
I was not interested in making any type of cash payoff. I told her at that point, but I was still interested in placing the trade, a small trade.
So you said, look, I'm not into any cash in paper bags anymore.
Right. But she gave me the tip, and I rationalized it. Well, I did this once. It becomes easy to do it again. Once you cross the line, it became easy to do it again. But again, it was a 0.9% position.
So you buy the 0.9% position. Does Rumi want any payoff for anybody after that?
On the third trade was Google was going to miss Wall Street's estimates. Stocks trade often whether they beat Wall Street's estimates or miss Wall Street's estimates.
Stocks will rally if they beat Wall Street estimates. They'll decline if they fail to meet Wall Street estimates. So if they're going to fail, the stock's going down.
So Con had a source that was a third-party IR firm in San Francisco that Google used. This information, a 22-year-old employee of this firm, was selling Google's Q2 earnings announcement, the actual press release, to 5 hedge funds.
Q2 is the second quarter. Okay, good.
To 5 hedge funds for $15,000. And so,
So there was an absolute price on this information.
right, she was selling it for to 5 hedge funds for $15,000
Each?
Yeah, each. She had a side hustle. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And so
And this comes to you again through the same
Con,
source?
Through Con, yeah. And then again, I called the guys downstream. Can you get the cash together? I have to pay this to Con. And I actually took it. I actually put $15,000 on my body and flew through LaGuardia Airport to San Francisco to give it to Con.
And eventually there are 4 of these.
Right, the last trade there was no cash payoff. So 2 of the 4 trades involved actual cash payoffs to either the Moody's analyst or Con. But there were 4 trades, all 0.9% positions in my portfolio.
And you've rationalized it.
Rationalized it, yeah.
Since we only have a limited amount of time, I want to push forward a little bit.
Sure.
Talk about the ensuing moments at the dry cleaners
Sure.
and what happens to you.
So at the end of 2007, after these 4 trades, my firm had made $1.2 million on these trades. My take as the junior partner, my personal take was $46,000. That would be later what I'd write the check to the SEC for disgorgement. Not a lot of money. At the end of 2007, I got a call from Rumi Khan saying she had been contacted by the SEC about the Hilton trade. And so I started getting a little bit nervous. What if the SEC is looking at who she called? I better have a plan in place why I bought these stocks. And so I had what I thought would be a plan just to kind of brush off the SEC because these were small trades. But the problem is, like Mike Tyson says, everybody has a plan until they get punched in the mouth. So the SEC didn't call me. I was out dropping off my dry cleaning on my way to work in Midtown Manhattan one morning in July of 2008. Turned around and saw 2 FBI agents with the wallets out, just like right out of the movies. Are you Tom?
I mean,
Yeah, yes, come sit down with us. So it was 2 agents. They said, we know about those 4 trades. We know that you were just down in Atlanta visiting your nephew Carter for his baptism on Sunday. So they really study you, they know you, they follow you. And my first thought was, oh my God, what's my dad going to say about this? That was my first thought. oh my God, my wife's going to find out because I only been married 2 years. Oh my God, this might impact my career. Oh yes, it will. Oh my God, I might be going to prison. But it went from dad to prison, the immediate thoughts. And I started making implicating statements. Yes, I made those 4 trades. There was these cash payoffs. And so they're writing it all down. And they said, okay, slow down.
Did they tell you you're entitled to have a lawyer?
Not so much, no. I just started talking.
You just started talking.
Today, it's take their card, don't say anything. But at that time, I just started talking. At 6:30 in the morning, I panicked. And I knew I had done something wrong. And so there was 2 agents, one sort of good cop, bad cop. And the good cop said, she could see I'm startled. She said, you know, we're here when you're ready to turn your life around. So I just started making implicating statements, told them everything, and they pulled out this web of names that were all whited out, and they said they were building some much bigger cases. I couldn't see the names, they were whited out. And they folded it up and gave me their card and said, Tom, you have the opportunity to help us build some of these bigger cases. It's going to help you out at the end of the day. And so I took their card. I went to work that day, summer of 2008. It was a terrible year for the market. And so the next few days was thinking about the life consequences of what had happened. I was ready to make amends for what I'd done. I knew I crossed the line back. I knew with those cash payoffs and everything, I never expected to be caught, but I was given this opportunity to help them.
Did they say what they meant by helping them?
Not until I called them. And they said what I'd have to do for them is wear a body wire and get individuals in the industry in conversations about either illicit trades they had made or corrupt contacts they had inside of these technology companies giving them information.
Did they imply that you were small potatoes and that they were after bigger?
I sensed that because of
fry?
these tipping charts. I could see I was kind of at the bottom and there was bigger targets at the top. And then later on, going through this, I sensed that there were many people in my position. I'd meet with them in Midtown Manhattan, and they say they have 3 or 4 guys like me they're meeting with that day to build these bigger cases. So I sensed that later, that I was helping them with something bigger.
So you agreed to wear a wire?
I agreed to wear a wire, and I really had an open playbook. It's often these situations that I would have to get my buddy that I tipped recorded to help me, but I kind of had an open playing field, like who could I bring them? And as I said, to my knowledge at this time, this behavior was pretty rampant in the technology-focused hedge fund industry. And so I would see individuals at these industry conferences, shoot them an instant message, good to see you, and over the course of the year, get them in conversations about either illicit contacts they had inside companies or trades they had made on inside information. And they would eventually, after several conversations, start talking to me. And I was wearing, it looked like the old battery in the BlackBerry, and it fit in my front pocket. And I'd record these conversations. When I started doing this, it felt like the wire was this big. I mean, my heart was pounding, and it felt like, but I got very good at this, getting people to talk. And I worked with the FBI for 2 years in this capacity.
What feelings of guilt did you have? Because you were obviously talking to some people who were your friends.
They were more, well, I tried to
Acquaintances,
dissect it
what?
between people I knew in the industry or knew of by reputation who were up to this, so I got to know them better. So I figured I'm going to try to get the guys who it's their business model to do this if I'm going to go down for this, $46,000. And so I started with people who it was their business model, trading on inside information.
When they first approached you, did you think, I can't do this? I mean, this is the wrong thing for me to do. What was your thought process in terms of wearing a wire to cooperate with the FBI?
I looked at it as I had a double job. I had my job at work and I had my job now with the FBI. I didn't really think, because I knew that there were people in the industry who this was that they rampantly did this. And so if I could then help the FBI sort of clean up the industry, I kind of took it that way rather than something negative. Like they were giving me this chance to help them.
Or were you thinking about it in terms of cleaning up the industry, or were you thinking about it in terms of, well, this will help me in terms of getting out of the problem that I created for myself?
A little bit of both, absolutely, yeah. But they kind of gave me an open playing field to help them out. And so I didn't talk to a lawyer for a year.
And so when you say open playing field, they didn't tell you who they wanted
That's
you
right.
to record. They just let you
Bring the name.
pick people to record.
Right, bring the name to them. It was one way.
It was one way.
Yeah.
And when you had a conversation with somebody that you recorded, what would you do? I mean, would you call the FBI guys?
I would take it back to the FBI. It wasn't they weren't listening to it real time, so I'd take it back, they'd listen to it, we'd meet, they'd coach me on what to say. Or my issue when I started this was I was nervous, and so if I asked you a question about a trade or we just start talking, I'm supposed to pause, and you're supposed to have some silence. Sometimes there's a minute of silence, and I'd start to fill the silence because I'm nervous, and so they coach me on that. Don't fill the silence, let the other individual talk, and eventually they'd start talking about the questions I had asked them before.
And how many people did you eventually bring them?
I eventually got credit for building over 20 of the 80 plus cases.
20 of the 80.
It was called Operation Perfect Hedge under pre-Perara, and over 80 individuals were charged. And at my sentencing, I got credit with building over 20 of the cases.
And you ultimately get these 20 odd people involved, and you settle.
I was sentenced in 2015. I pled guilty in 2009 to securities fraud and conspiracy to commit securities fraud.
And you had the mysterious name of Tipper
X.
X.
Right, because
Tipper
I was
X.
helping the FBI for 2 years build these cases, and I was not sentenced until 2015. It took me 6 years to be sentenced between when my name came out and when I was finally sentenced in court.
So during that 6-year period, what were you doing? Were you working? Continued to work?
I left my firm in 2009. My name became public in January 2010. And
How did it become public?
the FBI let me know that they were done with me as far as I was as useful as I could be to them. And so my name was just unsealed, it's called. So my guilty plea from 2009 was unsealed in January 2010. And it just became public one night. And the next day, the New York Times ran the story, the Wall Street Journal ran it on the front of Markets and Investing, Tipper X revealed. And so one of my many rationalizations was, who am I hurting? And I didn't realize, I realized at that time, anybody that knew me in any professional capacity had to raise their hand that day and say, oh my God, I know this guy, whether we talked every 6 weeks or once a week. And so they had to go tell their portfolio managers, their compliance officers, and of course they were all put through the ringer. Let me see your phone records, let me see your emails, did he get you in a weird conversation? To this day, we're coming up on 8 years of this, my name being released, 90% of people still won't talk to me.
How about your family?
So I eventually, I told my wife 3 days after the FBI approached me, and that was on a Tuesday. I told her on a Friday, and she took it much better than I would have expected. I said, I have something to tell you, and then I told her, and her immediate reaction was, oh, you didn't do anything against me. I think she thought I was going to talk about infidelity or something, but she said, oh my God, this is serious. But the reason, I think she took it like that, was the reason we were able to hang on to the marriage, which is very rare in this case, to stay married. And so I told her 3 days after it, told my parents, a couple of months after my name became public, they weren't following any of the cases, told them, and that was rough. Telling my dad, when the FBI first approached me, I thought, what's my dad going to say? And he didn't say really anything, just took it very, very hard. And then my mom took it hard as well. I mean,
Let me ask you one question.
I just want to get one thing into this. I know the judge didn't sentence you to any prison time because of your cooperation. You told me a story in the classroom about your daughter, 7-year-old daughter at the time, asking you to coach a soccer team.
Right.
Could you mention that to our audience?
Sure. So I'm a convicted felon, even though I didn't get sentenced to prison, convicted felon. And then just last year, my 6-year-old asked me to coach her in soccer. And I said, sure, I'll coach you, because I was a stay-at-home dad at that point. But I couldn't pass the background check to be her coach. And I told the commissioner, I know that I have a felony, but it's just insider trading. And he said, we have insurance with the league. It states in the policy felons can't be coaches of the kids. So the negative dividends of my actions from 2007, 2008 continue to pay today. And it's not a complaint. It's just something I never considered back when I placed those trades, that this many years later, I wouldn't be even, able to coach my daughter in soccer. And so that was pretty eye-opening, that I don't think about it all the time, but every few months it comes up in my life like this.
Can I ask you one question? You speak to many groups about what you did and what we've talked about today. What's the lesson that you try and leave with them?
Think about, when I speak to young professionals especially, think about the other 5 professionals that they talk to most. A lot of these cases were built from one person talking to another person, and to really scrub those networks. If there's anybody of whom they question the ethics, the integrity, or when you're talking to them, they give you that funny feeling in your stomach, just drop them out of your networks. Another situation is to think of situations where they could be engaging in what I call isolated decision making. meaning when this first tip came in, I didn't talk to my partner, I didn't talk to my compliance officer, I didn't talk to anybody in my organization. I made the decision on my own to cross this line and place a trade when it all started. And now that I've done a deeper dive into white collar crime, there's stories over and over of other individuals where the parallel narrative in their story and mine is this person is also engaging in isolated decision making, not talking to anybody, and ultimately having things escalate and throw their careers away as I did.
Yeah, they got to weigh the consequences of what they're doing.
Right.
Well, look, that's our program for today. Thank you, Tom, for joining us and for giving us your incredible insights of what you've lived through. Larry and I hope that you, our television audience, enjoyed the show and join us as we explore timely topics in future episodes. Thank you very much.